Hello everyone, this is the second update for Malzahar and Vel'koz, and this time I'm going to seriously go in depth for both of them, not just Malzahar this time. Sorry those of y'all who got a little ticked off a bit at me on the Vel'koz joke. So, I'm looking at all the various posts, Riot Repertoir especially, has made over the past month about the details involving Malzahar's rework, and I've collected them all here, so we can take a look at them. So let's start with the big post. This is the main one where Riot Repertoir gave a mid-year major update for Malzahar specifically. A couple of notable things is that they clarified that they're intending to keep Nethergrasp and Malefic Visions, that they want to get rid of the burst combo because it's just so trap card. You just get somebody into it and you smash a face on the keyboard and they actually die or they don't. And that they want to make Voidlings a bigger integral part of Malzahar's kit. So what do all these things mean a little bit more when we look into them? Well, let's take a look into that by first starting off with the general idea of what they want to turn Malzahar into. As Riot Repertoir stated here, Malzahar functions more as a sustained damage threat than an assassin in the long term, ideally, instead of the full assassin playstyle they currently have, which means they'll be likely less of a burst caster than they've previously been. They clarified this is probably because if Malzahar needs to be played like an assassin to win, they're probably not healthy to the game, because there are champions that are better suited to do both of those things, and given Malz's kit, that just means Malz is probably overtuned. So what does this mean for their abilities in general? Well, let's take a look at that, first starting with Q, because it's the first on the keyboard. The main thing notably about Color to Void is that while no details have been given about whether it's going to retain the particular shape, one thing that's been noted is that it will almost certainly keep the silence. Riot Repertoir notes that they'd like to keep the silence on Color to Void, and even further clarifies a more extreme statement that Malzahar's silence is both defining a Color to Void as well as probably the fairest silence in the game. So Color to Void is almost guaranteed to retain its silence after the rework unless something massively wrong goes. And along with having to keep the sustained damage playstyle, which is nice because that's useful for 80 Malzahar as well. Second, let's go over Null Zone. This one's more difficult. Throughout all the searching I found, Riot Repertoir has not brought up Null Zone a single time. Not even in this original post here is Null Zone even noted, while R&E and even the Voidlings are noted as things that Malzahar is enjoyed about. And so it makes it difficult to clarify about what Null Zone is going to look like because we have no information at all. Not a single word has been spoken about it. This lends me to believe Null Zone is going to be almost completely rechanged into something entirely different. What that might be is entirely up to speculation, but I think it's basically like a insert whatever spell you want for this new Malzahar playstyle slot, which will be incredibly useful going forward into this rework. Let's go over Malefic Visions next. Riot Repertoir clarified that they intend to keep Malefic Visions, one because they identified it here as a useful part that people like as a farming pattern, and they clarify here that almost unanimously people enjoyed the farming patterns that Malefic Visions provided. So we can likely expect Malefic Visions to reign roughly the same as it currently does. Finally, this brings up the Nethergrasp. As Riot Repertoir notes about Nethergrasp, it's likely to remain similarly mechanically, and they noted here that people like it as a reliable anti-mobility, anti-assassin spell. This makes it very likely that Malzahar is going to be able to still point and click with Nethergrasp in order to shut down people who have that kind of mobility. Either that, or it'll be some kind of skill shot that's still able to counter mobility, like some kind of homing thing. But that's up to speculation. There's no clue exactly about what it might entail to be able to both reliably shut down mobility while also not being so reliable that it guarantees a following burst combo. That's going to be a very difficult thing that Riot Repertoir is going to have to engage with. But for 80 Malzahar, a lot of people have been concerned with me that because Malzahar is turning into a sustained damage champion, that the playstyle of 80 Malz would no longer remain relevant, or at the very least is going to be consolidated with the AP playstyle. But we can see this is almost certainly not going to happen, and we're going to look at the evidence for this. First, Riot Repertoir notes that Voidlings are unlikely to gain additional microing, because it would be a really big change to the way that they play, but we aren't going to be expecting them to play like the little ghosts. And that they still will retain some degree of mobility, unlike your ghouls, for example. But we can go a little deeper here. In the original post that I made in the first update, as noted here, the long post about the one highest upvoted post of all time, actually, where I discussed Malzahar's identity, Riot Repertoir notes that the playstyle of AD Malzahar is likely to remain distinct from AP Malz, generally operating under the assumption that AD, CDR, and RPen are the kinds of things that AD Malz wants to build. Additionally, they clarify that Voidlings may become more numerous instead of more tanky, but this is up to testing out. That's not something that we should hedge on. But finally, the biggest piece of evidence that AD Malzahar is going to remain distinct? When we started thinking about ways we would like to approach Malzahar, one of the directions we took was making him about micromanaging Voidlings. But we've mostly decided against it. Heavy micro Voidlings would be a large shift in playstyle made at Malz, and additionally, Voidlings thematically are the embodiment of the chaotic void, and so therefore don't feel like they should be integral to the kit of the meta Malzahar, right? So this tells us that AD and AP are going to remain incredibly distinct from each other, so we can expect our AD Malz montages to remain going forward. Now on to Vel'koz. We've gotten a little bit of an update from Beluga Whale, not quite as detailed about Riot Repertoir. They haven't given us many comments to work with, but we do see a couple of things. First, that the poke pattern using Q is likely going to stay. Riot really likes Vel'koz's Q, and they really want to keep the stay there as well. Second, that one of the bigger changes that's going to happen is that Vel'koz is likely not going to be able to wave clear as effectively after W, or if they are, they're going to have to engage with the opponent more. As Beluga Whale establishes here, maxing Q in lane leads to super engaging play, but most players would unquestionably max W for mid Vel'koz, which is a generally less enjoyable playstyle. So there's one thing we can see that's going to stay, it's going to be the Q. If there's one thing that's probably going to have some kind of change, it's going to be the W. And Tectonic Disruption seems like something they want to change, but Beluga Whale noted in a different area that Tectonic Disruption thematically is in the scope of this project. It's just not large enough to make that large of an adjustment. So it seems the bigger change is going to be on W and the passive, as opposed to any of the other more identifying features of Vel'koz. One of the other notable things, and one thing I thought for sure Riot was intending to change, was the burst of Vel'koz. They stated that they want to actually allow for that all-in combo to still exist, the keep existing combat as well as the all-in combo. I don't know if this means that they intend to still keep the Vel'koz burst as high as it is, or if that just means that they want to allow that combo but in a different way that requires a little bit more setup. This is going to be a little difficult to figure out, but hopefully all of this information will be useful for you for being able to understand both Malzahar and Vel'koz's reworks going forward. Thanks for watching.